Good morning, YouTube. Anthgab here on another beautiful day. We've been having some great weather in Toronto, Canada over the last few weeks. We did have a snowstorm, but it looks like it's definitely corrected itself. I think the last time I recorded for you guys, there was like 10 inches of snow on the ground. It's all melted, it's all gone. And so I decided to take this opportunity today to remove one of the last engine covers on the CB550 motor. The reason why I have to take an entire day to remove it is because, like I said in my previous video, every screw on this bike is stripped. But I am going to use this as an opportunity to show you guys how to remove stripped screws for covers on most motorcycle engines. There's a couple videos already on YouTube that definitely helped me, so hopefully I can just add another one to the collection, and if anyone has any questions, they can take a look at it there. So let's get started. So this is the area, or this is the cover that we're going to be removing today. And just by looking at it, I've counted about 10 screws that I'll have to remove the cover. Also, the kickstand here, this will have to come off. And it looks like the only bolt securing it is this little guy right here. Okay, so we'll start with this bolt. I'm also going to spray all of these other screws down with some WD-40, all 10 of them. You see some at the bottom there. There's also some clamps securing this wire to the points, to the ignition points, and it goes all the way up, wraps around there, and comes off. So I'll have to remove those as well. And I guess this would be a good time to show you. So it seems to be that these screws have a very specific screwdriver that's supposed to be used with them. Over 40 years, of course, multiple people have touched this motorcycle, and looks like they didn't exactly use the right driver. So now you can't really do much. It just slips right out. So first thing to do is spray them all down with WD-40. Once that's done, we'll see if we can heat them up. So at first this little guy was giving me some trouble, but I went at it with a rubber mallet and my 12mm wrench here. Banged it off a couple times. It's now become loose, and I can now remove it just with the socket and ratchet combo. Okay, and there we have it. Now this is just removing the kickstand, and all I needed was a little bit of WD-40 and I guess some elbow grease. So now this should come off fairly easily. And there we go, a couple of tugs, and there it is. The kickstand is now removed from the motorcycle cover. Now hopefully we can get the rest of these off. These are going to be much more difficult. So here we have the engine cover that we're going to be working on today. I counted about 10 screws that we're going to have to remove. They've all been soaking in WD-40. Not that that's going to do much. What we are going to use today is a Dremel tool to cut new dashes in each of the screw heads, and then we're just going to pop them off with a flathead screwdriver and a rubber mallet. Now, most people that have Dremel tools, it's a simple tool. You just hook this little Dremel cutting disc up to, and it works pretty well. But I don't have a power outlet in the unit, so we're going to be using a Ryobi drill, and conveniently enough, this fits in and works pretty well. So I found that it's best to try and go with a pre-existing line. You don't want to cut a new angle in because that's just going to be more work for you. But it will look pretty weird going at some odd angles. But I'm going to try and get this one first. And obviously eye protection. You can't see me right now, but I am wearing glasses. That will be my eye protection for today. Obviously, we're trying not to cut into the actual cover. We want to save the cover as much as we can, because it's a lot harder to replace a cover than it is to replace some old screws. Now we'll check and see if our driver can fit in there snugly. Yeah, it's definitely deep enough to get some leverage, maybe a little bit deeper. Yeah, that should work. We're gonna bang it out now, but before we do that, we're gonna apply some heat. Now, you always want to be careful when using heat immediately after you just drench these screws in WD-40, but I've cleaned any of the residue from the WD-40 off. Anything that's sitting inside the screw won't come in contact with the open flame, or that's sitting inside the thread, so we should be fine there. And so with a little bit of pounding, trying to get some leverage on the screw, basically going into the cut and just hammering at it gently. You don't want to break the screw head off. We were able to get it completely loose, and now just by turning it with the new cut, the screw comes right out. Now, of course, this screw is completely defunct. You're not going to reuse this one, but you can stop by Burfasco or anything like that, any place that has a large amount of screws and bolts, and get it replaced fairly easily. It's also going to be really hot, so you want to grab it like that, and there you go. We removed our first sharp screw. So, still working on this cover here, and definitely reminds me how annoying it is to try and remove these bolts. But one thing that I found that really helps is, I guess it's kind of hard to see there. Let me try and orientate the motor differently. You can see I've had to change it already because I need access to the ones at the bottom. But if I just turn it toward the camera here, so you can see, this one gave me a really hard time, and I just now got it released. I was heating up the head of the bolt, which seemed to work. It does work for most of them, but ones that are really stuck on, you're gonna have to heat the head, but as also the part of the casting here that the bolt sits in. Heating up that will help release all the other threads that are stuck on. So this is pretty weird. Now that I got this one released, this one right here at the bottom, some oil seems to have come out of the cavity there. Strange. Well, I guess there's going to be quite a bit of oil as I peel back this cover. This is the clutch cover, meaning that, and obviously most motorcycles that I know use a wet clutch system, so the clutch receives oil, or motor oil, from the engine, and that's why on a motorcycle you can ride the clutch a lot more than you do in a car, which uses obviously a dry clutch. So just a quick update for you guys. This is the cover that we're working on. But what I've done is position the the engine up this way to change the orientation, because it allows me to get a lot more power with every stroke. See, the way it was sitting before with this part on the table, every time I would hit it, the engine would move a bit. Meaning that a lot of my energy is being transferred to the whole thing and just moving the motor. But like this, it's a lot easier to pound down directly right up top, right up top there, and really get all the energy transferred through. Okay guys, so I have all but one of the screws off, and the last one is loosened. Now I just got to use the cuts I made to take it out. Now keep in mind, when I was changing the orientation of the motor on the table, I had all of my connecting rods secured with a rag in each cylinder hole, just to make sure that they weren't knocking around hitting the housing or anything. And I also had my cam chain tied with like a rag put through it to make sure that didn't fall into the case. Those things you want to do to make sure that while you're moving the motor around, none of the exposed parts that are normally not exposed are moving around, banging into each other, or just being generally damaged. The last one, a very painful set of screws, and now I'm not exactly sure how this is going to come off, but oh, it seems like it's going to come off pretty easily. You can already see there's a lot of oil coming out, so I'm just going to get my bucket ready here. This, by the way, was unreal. This is a snap-on driver, and without a driver as good as this one, I think I would have probably needed 3 to get to bang off all those screws. I basically used this as a punch today, and it still has an edge. Like, it's ridiculously good. Oh, that and the Bernzomatic torch, which I can't believe lasted this long. Let's see. I'm hoping there's nothing else securing this. Nope, doesn't look like there is. Something metallic just fell off. We're gonna try tugging on it here. Yeah, it's just getting hung up on the Kickstarter down here. Of course, this cover is still very hot. And there we go. It's off, and there's the clutch. Look at that that is pretty cool. So clean on the inside. It's probably out of focus, but. And the old gasket here, which who knows when the last time that was put on. The dipstick right there. Put this down for a second. And yeah, now we have access to the Kickstarter mechanism there, the clutch itself. Oh, that is really cool. I guess this is the thing that allows the clutch to engage and disengage. I'm not sure how new this clutch is, but I'm probably going to have to replace it, I guess, just since I have everything apart. Doesn't make sense to not replace the clutch. That is pretty cool. And there you have it. If you're ever wondering what a wet clutch looked like, then this is basically it. And it took me about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to remove all 10 of those screws. It's definitely something that you need patience for. But you know what, it saves you a lot of time, or a lot of money I should say, leaving it at a shop to have them do if you're looking to rebuild your motor. And it's something, you know, you can do on the side. You don't need many tools to do it. I used a Dremel on a Ryobi battery powered drill, which most people do have if you just have a simple set of tools. I had to buy the Dremel bit, obviously. Came with 5 discs and it wasn't very expensive. I had a torch laying around at home, and yeah, a snap-on. I definitely recommend the snap-on driver, but that's it. That's all you really needed, and a rubber mallet, because that obviously I use it for other things on the bike, but this made things a lot easier too. It acted as a great some great leverage for something to punch. Okay guys, so today's turning out to be a pretty productive day. Not only did I get the clutch cover off the motor, but I actually just got a text from the gentleman who's polishing all these parts for me. The parts I dropped off to him earlier this week are all done. We're actually going to go and pick those up now, and I'm going to have some awesome before and after shots for you guys. He sent me a message with what they look like now, and it's honestly hard to believe that they're even my parts, but that just shows you what 40 years can do to a motorcycle. So I'm actually going to bring him up the cover I just removed, as well as my valve cover and the rear drum, the outside of the drum for the rear brakes. Hopefully he can get those parts done for me, as well as the previous parts.